No one is illegal on stolen land. And yeah, it's just really hard to know what to say and what to do right now. And I feel really hopeful in this room, and I feel like we just need to keep fighting and speaking up and protesting, and our voices really do matter, and the people matter, and I say sorry.
You are living in the most dangerous time in American history.
We won't take a single back step.
Former professional basketball player is now the Republican Party's choice.
Can you imagine Royce White, the U.S. Senate?
White won the endorsement on May 18th with 67% of the vote.
There's nothing that guarantees we win, but I guarantee you if we lose, we will die. But I want to start off with the Grammy Awards that took place yesterday. And, the sentiment from the Grammy Awards, from once again, the Hollywood elites, and they prove to us time and time again how out of touch with reality they really are. And yesterday was no letdown in that department, let's say. Very, very becoming expected response from Hollywood on any contentious political or cultural issue. Earlier today on X, I posted a clip of Billie Eilish, who made the statement, which is conventional wisdom over on the far left or in this progressive left sort of, mainstream academia and thinking. No one is illegal on stolen land. And the crowd erupted into applause. I mean, they just ate it up. And this is a common sentiment. I mean, I'm coming to learn, and I think we all are. This is a common sentiment on the left. No one is illegal on stolen land. I'm going to talk about Billie Eilish here in a moment, more specifically. I mean, her as an individual person, because I think it's an important point in the conversation as a whole. But let's just deal with first things first. The statement that no one is illegal on stolen land couldn't be more ridiculous. First of all, let's just talk about a standard, a universal standard worldwide. We can't be the only country in the world without a border. It's just not feasible. Secondly, a nation with no laws, because we rest upon stolen land by their measure, a nation with no laws isn't a nation. A nation with no laws can't survive as a nation. We all know that. So the claim that there is no illegal on stolen land, no one is illegal on stolen land, is a fundamental non-starter. It's one of these strange sort of abstract, woke egalitarian philosophies that has no application to it whatsoever. It's just something people say to make themselves feel better. And that's exactly what Billie Eilish is doing. And that's what the rest of the woke Hollywood elites are doing when they say things like, no one is illegal on stolen land. Of course, there are people who are illegal on stolen land. Of course, you can do things that are illegal on stolen land. And if we want to take that away, if we want to take that, that standard away, that framework away, then why don't we start there in Hollywood? If there's no such thing as illegal on stolen land, why don't we do away with the gates in the gated communities there in Hollywood Hills, or the security that some of these Hollywood elites use when they're going to an award show like the Grammys or out in public, or whatever the case may be? Why don't we start with doing away the boundaries of high society? That's never their suggestion. Oh, I have a better idea. What about music publishing and copyrights? Is there no such thing as illegal when it comes to stolen music? Because certainly you can draw a corollary between, let's say, the history of a nation and a given piece of land like America, territorial America, and music. I mean, certainly Billie Eilish didn't invent the C, no, the note C or the C chord. Of course, Billie Eilish didn't invent 32 bar pop form. Certainly, Billie Eilish didn't invent the verse and chorus structure of most modern day pop music, or you could say, chorus, verse, bridge. There's different, variations, but of course, Billie Eilish didn't invent that. So is that also considered stolen? Is anything that somebody possessed before you, then uses later to profit or benefit themselves or others, a community, in our case, a nation, is that all considered stolen? And if it's stolen, are we supposed to do away with the laws in all of those domains? And if that's the case, then why don't we start with the music business? Why do we have copyright or publishing laws of intellectual property in the music business? None of the people there at the Grammys last night would support getting rid of copyright laws, because then they'd all lose their dog bowl. That's how they all get paid. That's how they all make money. None of them would say music is for everyone. Music is for the entire world. Music doesn't belong to anybody. There's no such thing as private property or publishing or copyright or intellectual property in possession of music. Music was made of the universe, and it's for the universe. You never hear them say things like that. And there's a reason. The reason is obvious, because it doesn't benefit them personally, individually, to give up the one thing that makes them money. Yet they want all of us to give up our very small piece of the country that we have left. And it is getting increasingly smaller. The average working class American citizen is getting crushed. Crushed, mind you, by many of the people who fund, who subsidize, who are the beneficiaries of the music business and all of the ancillary corporate advertisement that goes alongside it. So the Hollywood elites, even the artists who are desperate to make you think that they're with the people, right? Because their music has to connect with a fan on a more personal level. So, they're desperately interested in trying to present themselves as being one with the people anyway. And if they're not, then the music loses something, right? The music doesn't hit the same if they're an abstract elitist sort of figure and persona. One of the main things, the characteristics they talk about in good music or with a good artist, is that their music is relatable. Their art is relatable. Most of the time it's relatable because it's relating to everyday things, everyday circumstances, everyday scenarios and realities of the human condition of society. So they have to try and keep it real. Well, I just got to say, you're becoming more and more fake, but maybe it's working because society is getting more and more fake. Maybe we're willing to accept these strange, and they are strange, might I add. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. Maybe we're more willing to accept these strange and weird artists, fake artists, because we are becoming more and more fake as a society. Again, if there's no such thing as illegal and stolen land, then we are suggesting America should be a nation without laws. It's the same argument they made when they said defund the police. And they lost a lot of people. Even on the left, they even lost some Democrats, some more middle of the road Democrats who couldn't possibly go along with defund the police because, the police are really the rent-a-cops for the casino, for a global corporate community. And that is where we need to get much better with policing, in the sense that even policing itself is a cog in the machine. It's just not the main issue. It's not where our main focus should be. And this fight against ICE and ultimately what appears to be a very sick and twisted, a very perverse fight against law and order itself, fundamentally as a concept, culturally as an idea, a fight against law and order itself is what we're really up against now, culturally. There is a heavy sentiment against law and order itself. Again, if there is no illegal, if no one is illegal on stolen land, then by their definition, America can't have any laws. Because where do you draw the line? Does it just have to do with immigrants, or are we even talking about American citizens now? I mean, how can America rightly hold anybody accountable for their actions if they are a country based and rooted in racism and conquest or piracy, for that matter? Colonialism. If the sin of colonialism is so great that it spans across history into the present, at every moment moving forward, if that sin is so great, then who is America to adjudicate any rights or wrongs, any laws at all? And here's a question you have to ask yourself, I would encourage some people on the left to ask themselves this question. Are you really ready to live in a world with no laws? So, and they'll try and make this abstract argument, oh, well, we don't mean that there shouldn't be any laws. We just mean that the laws should only apply when they directly involve me. Yeah, no. We're not saying that there shouldn't be any laws. We're saying the laws should only apply or be enforced if it directly involves me in my immediate life. That's what they're saying. Because again, none of them are ready for, again, take Billie Eilish, for example. If we did away with the police, if we did away with ICE and immigration enforcement, if we did away with laws themselves and all of the courts, you've already taken the Second Amendment, or you want to, who's going to protect all of us? Is little Billie going to come from down from her ivory tower, down from her, global citizen, cosmopolitan global citizen life, where she's adored and revered by young girls who, are lost in the same sort of identity trance that she believes in? Are the Billie Eilishes of the world going to come down and protect us in a post-apocalyptic society, in a post-civilized society? Is Billie Eilish going to come down and protect all of us with her empathy, with her emotion, with her opinions? Again, you've already taken away the Second Amendment, or let's say you've greatly undermined the Second Amendment, even at a cultural level here in this country. And there are real designs to reduce or scale back the scope of the Second Amendment to a more disarmed populace. So you want to take the guns. I mean, we hear that every day. We hear that every year. You want to take the guns. You take away the guns from the citizens. You take away the police. You take away ICE, immigration enforcement. You take away the courts and all the laws that you say are white supremacy. Who's going to protect us? The answer is nobody. The answer is nobody. And when that day comes, you'll see these people change their tune very quick. You'll realize the things they're saying, the ideas they're promoting aren't really applicable to the general public. They're only applicable in their small little world, in their small little vacuum, in this small little fabricated reality they have about life. It's not a prescription for society or even politics. It's about as real as the music that they write. It's written in a vacuum. It's written in the abstract. There is no call or standard for literary responsibility when these people go to write music. That's why they can write whatever they want, and there's a part of that that's beautiful, and in some cases, it does resonate and penetrate with the audience when we hear it, when we feel it, because music is vibrational. There's no doubt about that. So there is a part of it that we resonate with. But take hip hop for example. A lot of these guys are rapping about shit that they've never done, shit that they only dream about doing. Sick enough, shit that they've only dreamt about doing. Now, there are people who actually do some of the things that they rap about, or they've done some of the things that they rap about. And I'm not encouraging that a genre dominated by gangster rap, criminal behavior, that we need more people in it that are real, so to speak. I'm just saying that in music, you have the right to write whatever you want. So by definition, there's a lack of real in it. It's embellished. It's embellished. It's not rooted in reality. It's not applicable to everyday life. It's nice. You can listen. You can appreciate it. You can take some enjoyment from it. But these are not the people that should be giving us political direction, political leadership, unless they completely break away from that profession and they talk to you in a way that's not the same as the art form, as art, as poetry, as music. Let's talk about the real. Billie Eilish has security, armed security. Billie Eilish has a house, I'm sure, with a gate. I'm sure that gate is much taller than your average man or woman, so they can't just hop over it at will because she's a person of interest or high priority, because she's a public figure or she's popular. I'm sure she has a gate at her house. And I'm sure she has an attorney who understands publishing and copyright laws so that she can make money off of laws that protect her music, that designate her music as her music. So she can have her own little piece of the world all to herself, but all the rest of us should share it with everybody else. Narcissism, clinical narcissism. And so we walk on, we walk down the road a little bit, only to find when we take a deeper dive into the music business, into Hollywood, into Billie Eilish specifically, what do we find? We find her dressing up as a demon in her music video. I don't know about you all out there, but I'm a Christian. And when I was growing up, your mother, your father, your aunts and uncles, your basketball coaches, or any adults who had any real sense, any resemblance of sense, because not all of them are all the way wrapped tight anyway. Nobody's wrapped complete. No human being is wrapped complete. Let's say that. But people who have even a resemblance of sanity, they didn't let you play around with demonic uh, symbols. People were not, there was a time in this country's recent history where people were very uncomfortable, and rightfully so, very uncomfortable with anything demonic. Sure, you may go and watch a horror movie or some type of sci-fi thriller horror movie that touches on the supernatural and demonic, that discusses the supernatural and demonic, but you left it at the movie theater. And if a kid, it used to be like, if you went to see a movie, and one doesn't come off the top of my head, but let's say there was a movie like one I used to love, Eddie Murphy. I don't know if many of you in the audience even know this movie, but the black folks probably will. Vampire in Brooklyn, right? Eddie Murphy plays the vampire in the movie Vampire in Brooklyn. And I used to like the movie when I was young. I don't know. I mean, people loved Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy is a great actor and comedian. One of the greats of his era for sure, but maybe all time. And I liked the movie Vampire in Brooklyn. I didn't know why. I was a little kid when it came out. But I say that, I bring that up as an example if I was to leave the movie theater or the television goes off at home and I was to imitate a vampire, your mom would say, "Hey, cut that out. I don't like that." Right? Because there was a cultural sentiment that we didn't want to that some things were above us. Some things were above us and they weren't to be meddled with. They weren't to be trifled with. Like God. You don't play about God. When you talk about God, you don't play about God. Your grandmother and your grandfather and the elders used to tell you, don't play about God. Don't swear on God. Don't put things on God. Don't play about God because you're dealing with forces that you can't comprehend. You couldn't possibly comprehend. Well, the same thing went for the demonic and the supernatural on the evil end of things. I don't like that. Don't imitate a demon, right? Even The Exorcist, when The Exorcist came out, a little kid who may have been allowed to watch it or may have seen part of it might have tried to imitate demonic possession. And the elders would say, you quit that. Stop doing that because we don't play around with things that we couldn't possibly comprehend. And we don't want to invite any energy or spirits of evil, of the demonic. We don't want to invite that. We don't even want to possibly open up the doorway to allow that in. We've lost that in our society. We've lost that in culture almost completely. It still exists out there. I'm not saying that there aren't Christians or people who fear the supernatural and fear God that wouldn't still uphold that standard or that practice, that cultural practice. But by and large, especially in the mainstream, we have completely lost our fear of evil and the demonic. We've done the inverse. We've embraced it. We've embraced it. We've made it cool. We've made it trendy, in vogue. And that's why a young girl like Billie Eilish is dressing up like a demon in her music videos. And she's not the only one. She's just the latest one. And she's the one who made this comment last night at the Grammys. And I just find it so ironic. All of these Christians, all of these people who put child of God and Psalm this and Psalm that on their social media pages. They're all children of God, yet they're willing to promote, co-sign, agree with a young woman who dressed up and pretended to be a demon. And we're supposed to take you people serious? I'm not talking about Billie Eilish. She's an idiot. I just explained how she's an idiot. She wants rules for thee and not for me. Rules for everybody else, but not for her. Or in the inverse, she wants the rules to apply to her when they need to apply to her, when they benefit her, but not to everyone else in theory, in the abstract, in the hypothetical, in her fabricated reality about politics and American life. She wants the rules to apply where she wants them to apply and only where she wants them to apply. That is the clinical definition of narcissism. But maybe even more narcissistic still is the rest of you all who pretend casually that you're Christian, you have some loyalty to God, to Jesus Christ, and then you're agreeing with and promoting a young girl who dressed up like a demon. I don't know which one of you is more narcissistic, to be honest. I mean, at least Billie Eilish could make the case that she's actually broken from reality, and maybe she actually is dealing with some level of demonic possession, demonic influence. That may actually be. So in that case, I mean, I can't give her a pass on behalf of God. That's something her and God have to deal with, or something her and Satan have to work out. But I can understand that once you cross over demonic influence to demonic oppression and demonic possession, again, you're dealing with forces that you can't possibly comprehend. So Billie Eilish almost, you could say, man, understand, she's struggling. She's struggling. The mental illness, the depression, the despair, the darkness of the human spirit, she's struggling. That's the only reason you would dress up like a demon in the first place. But some of you all out there in this country, all around the world, who fancy yourselves Christians, but you can't draw a hard line between yourselves and your children and the people who openly dress up and pretend to be demons, pretend to be doers of the devil. And see, and here's where we've gotten it. Here's where we've gone so wrong in this country, and even in the Christian community worldwide. Here's where we've gone extremely wrong. I get the sense that people forget that all you have to do is ask for forgiveness. That is an option. See, I think what people are suffering from, not the Billie Eilish's, not the well, her too, but the entire spectrum from the I casually believe in God and Jesus. I grew up at the church, so I haven't really let that part go yet, over to the I'm a Satan worshiper. Everybody in between there. I get the sense that people are resentful about the proposition of sin. I understand that everybody is struggling with sin. Everybody is struggling with sin. You show me the holiest person, the holiest of the holy, and I guarantee you they still have an internal struggle with sin every day. So we're all struggling with sin. But I get the sense that the new cultural norm is that people resent the proposition of sin itself. Meaning not only do you struggle with sin like everybody else, you resent the fact that you have to struggle with sin because you resent the fact that you should have to struggle at all. Suffering has become the baseline measurement of human existence for you. And you think in a truly narcissistic fashion that that suffering shouldn't befall you, that you should be immune to suffering. This is the narcissism that leads to suicide. This is the narcissism even more broadly and more commonly because we do have an epidemic of suicide, which is why we have an epidemic of suicidal empathy. The epidemic of suicide in this country, which is a full-blown epidemic itself, is a microcosm of the epidemic of suicidal empathy. There are also things like suicidal ideation. And even more broadly, let's say if we opened up the aperture a little bit more, you could see the propensity of human beings towards self-destruction. How common it is for human beings to hurl towards self-destruction in their own individual life, in their own individual psychology. There's a real propensity towards self-destruction in human beings. So with that being said, we do see that a lot of people struggle with suicide. I mean, really struggling with suicide, but the root of suicidal ideation and the root of suicidal behavior is narcissism. It's the idea that suffering is beneath you for some reason, that you shouldn't have to suffer. Or even furthermore, that the suffering is so painful, the suffering is so unbearable, which you wouldn't think if you thought that suffering was an intangible part of being human, of human beingness, if you thought that suffering and being human and being alive were inextricably linked, you would never find yourself in a situation where the suffering becomes too much. And I know we're getting deep here, and I want to be sensitive to all the people out there who are struggling with suicide or have survived suicide or have loved ones who have committed suicide. I'm not saying something against them that's intended to be insulting. It's just a matter of fact that this is coming from a person who was early in the mental health conversation, early to say there is a crisis of mental health and there will be a full-blown crisis of mental illness and severe mental illness if we don't start to think differently about the human condition and how all of these things are connected culturally, politically, spiritually, in the corporate world, amongst the homeless, with our veterans or law enforcement officers, with your everyday average American citizen. If we don't start to think about these things differently, we will find ourselves in a full-blown mental health epidemic and crisis of mental illness and severe mental illness. And look at where we are. And Billie Eilish, as talented as she is, as pretty as she is, as charismatic as she is, that young woman is suffering from mental illness, severe mental illness, I might add, severe. She can try and dress it up any way she wants. And the Grammys can try and give her an award to justify the sickness, the darkness in Hollywood or in the music industry or in corporate America as a whole or in, this industrial-based economy that we've built that prioritizes the material and the gossip or the validation over the meaning and the purpose. We can do that all we want to. Doesn't change the fact that she's still obviously suffering from severe mental illness, because you don't dress up as a demon unless you're suffering from mental illness. And you can be high functioning with severe mental illness. Never forget, there are plenty of people who are manic depressives and schizophrenic who have moments where they appear to be normal. The question is, how much damage can they do at their worst? How much damage are they capable of in their worst moments? And that's different for all of us. It's different for all of us. Some of us would shock ourselves if we could see a movie reel of what we're capable of in our worst self. We would be shocked. We would be scared. That, in fact, may break us from reality itself, to be able to peer into how bad a person you are capable of being at your worst. Some of you already know. Some of you have already been to that dark place in your own mind, in the real world. Some of you are there now, and you're trying to work your way through it. Some of you have a thing called faith to work your way through those dark places. Some of you have given up and given over. That's the main point. That's the central point here. Some of you have given up and you have given over. We don't dress up and play and pretend to be demonic. Not people who are Christian anyway. And we don't support, we don't endorse, we don't encourage, we don't promote people who dress up and play like they're demonic. It's kind of a reveal of the entire, situation here in this country. The cultural situation, the cultural situation, the spiritual situation that undergirds the political. The argument about illegal immigration, it's not by accident. It's not a coincidence that the political debate about illegal immigration and immigration enforcement sees two people on two sides of a distinct line. On one side, people who say, hey, we believe in God. We're Christian. We believe in Jesus Christ. And the other side has all of these people who may say they're Christian, may get up there at the Grammys and thank God after they win their award. And, they may be casual Christians, what you could call cultural Christians, right? They're still cultural Christians because they grew up in a house where grandma and grandpa or mom and dad went to church or whatever the case may be. So they're cultural Christians, just like we have cultural Democrats. And then you got your people over there who really have a different way of thinking about the supernatural. And and I wonder, do the people who are over there as casual Christians understand or even acknowledge that they're side by side with, being influenced by, in some cases being led by, people who believe in the demonic over God? And I guess that's a beautiful segue to Jeffrey Epstein, because the most the most revealing thing in the Jeffrey Epstein dossier, the Jeffrey Epstein emails that were released, for me anyway, is the Satanism, the ritualism. A bank account that's named after the demonic entity Baal. It was a child sacrificing entity, demon. These are the things, and then you think, well, who was Jeffrey Epstein? Who was he connected to? And we're starting to see that a lot of these same Democrats, a lot of these same mainstream media personalities, a lot of these same people on Instagram who you may know personally, who love them some hip hop, who love them some rap music, but they say they're a child of God and they want to criticize President Trump for his connection to Jeffrey Epstein. But as soon as Jay-Z gets mentioned, everybody finds a way to scramble out of it. Everybody finds a way to justify why Jay-Z, and it would appear many, many folks in those Hollywood circles were connected to individuals like Jeffrey Epstein, and now you can safely say Harvey Weinstein as well. But where do we draw the line? And I think that's where the real crisis is in this country. We have a crisis of being able to draw the line. I just want to say, here's a tip. Here's a tip for you out there. You can ask for forgiveness. That's a part of the deal. It seems like people have forgotten that or may have overlooked that, or maybe they've abandoned that, or for whatever reason they resent. Like I said, I think a lot of this is people resent the fundamental proposition of sin itself. They resent the proposition of sin because it's tough, and tough leads to suffering, and people feel that they're above suffering, that they shouldn't have to suffer, that human beings shouldn't have to suffer. Now we're talking about fundamental philosophy of life in the human existence. And that's what our politics has to get back down to, those basics. Do you believe that human beings shouldn't have to suffer or will inevitably suffer? Or that there's any way to get rid of suffering altogether? That there's any way to actually get rid of suffering for humans? And that's where the Billie Eilishes of the world, again, and most of these Hollywood elites and their stupid woke politics are completely unapplicable in real life. Completely unapplicable. Again, you take away the guns, Second Amendment, you take away the police, you take away ICE, you take away immigration enforcement, you take away laws and courts. Who's going to protect us? Who's going to protect anybody? Well, their argument may be something like, if we took away all these oppressive institutions and mechanisms like the law or immigration enforcement, or let's say the patriarchal tyranny and misogyny or toxic masculinity of the Second Amendment, if we took away any of these things or all of those things, life for human beings would get progressively better. And we may, in fact, reach a point where we find ourselves in a utopia where no human being has the impulse to be predatory on another human being. I mean, if you believe that, you're fucking stupid. And a lot of you are fucking stupid. Pardon my French. I'll ask for forgiveness later, but God knows that I'm only trying to impress upon you just how stupid that is. One, it doesn't account for the biological nature of human beings that are always challenged to transcend the animalistic gene, the animalistic DNA in us. And it also doesn't account for the real, present, in the physical world, existence of evil, of demonic spirits, of demonic forces, of supernatural wickedness. It does not account for that. There is no utopia. There never has been, and there never will be. Sure as hell isn't coming by way of communism. Sure as hell isn't coming by way of egalitarianism. Because we see that communism and egalitarianism usually end up in totalitarian tyranny. Billie, young Billie, who lives in her own little fabricated reality, and all you stupid adults out there who are 2 times her age, 10 years older than her, 15 years older than her, some cases 25 years older than her, who would co-sign that shit. But you know what? Wisdom doesn't have any age, and that's what we're figuring out too. I'm 34 years old. But I'm waking up every day and I'm looking out in the world and I'm seeing people who are in their mid 40s and mid 50s, even into their 60s, even some of these idiots who are holding these protests at these local targets here in Minneapolis. Some of these white liberal women who you can tell are suffering from severe mental illness, and never do they stop to think, maybe, just maybe, God or Jesus Christ or some faith practice would help me with my internal demons. Never does it dawn on them that there's some utility, there's some good use of the Christian faith, the Christian guide to life. Some of them are raging atheists, Judeo-Buddhists. They trust their psychologist and the medication from Big Pharma more than they trust God, Jesus, and the common sense of the Bible. Some of you say you trust the Bible. Some of you say you trust the common sense of the Bible. Some of you even post about the Bible, but you find yourself promoting, supporting, agreeing with a young woman who finds it even remotely appropriate to dress up like a demon. And then you make some weird political justification like, well, we may not agree on Christianity and the devil and dressing up like a demon, but we can agree no one is illegal on stolen land. Really? You think the two things are mutually exclusive? You think there's no connection or correlation between a stupid-ass idea like no one is illegal on stolen land and the radical rejection of God and Christ? You think there's no connection there, huh? No connection whatsoever. And I get it. There's a huge anti-Christian movement, and you're seeing how they tried to blast Nicki Minaj last night. Fuck you. Fuck you people. Every single A-lister or pop cultural icon that challenges the political status quo, the norm, the mainstream media, and jumps to the other side and says, wait a minute, maybe we should have a border. Maybe there is value to Christianity. Maybe it's okay that I believe in God. Maybe I don't have to resent the fundamental proposition of sin itself. Maybe I can just ask for forgiveness. Anybody who jumps that fence, they try to gang up on. Keep going, Nicki Minaj. Keep going. And nobody says you have to be perfect. That's the thing about the Christian side of the fence, the Christian side of the tracks. We understand you're not perfect. See, they try and make you believe that Christians in the Christian community, and some are, don't get me wrong, that the Christian community is so high up on their high horse and so judgmental that you have to be perfect to be a part of the Christian community. That's not true at all. That's not even remotely true. If it is, you got to check which Christians you're hanging out with. And I'm not saying that all Christians are perfect. I'm saying the opposite, in fact. And there are a lot of Christians who are really far from the truth and really far from Christ. No doubt about that. But the fundamental of Christianity is that we know from the outset, none of us are perfect. We don't demand, and this is why I got mad even about the Amber Rose thing. all of these women in the conservative movement and all of these men, even in the conservative movement, these commentators or influencers, Amber Rose isn't somebody we want to represent the conservative and Christian movement. Excuse me? Excuse me? No, we want people to testify in public on the loudest microphones possible that they have converted, that they are trying to convert and change their life. We want that. We encourage that. We should be completely supportive of that. Do we have to follow them in every single idea that comes out of their mouth? No, that wouldn't be temperate. That wouldn't be prudent. That wouldn't be reasonable. Just because Amber Rose is popular, because she's famous and has a huge following and wants to come over to the MAGA side of the track and say, hey, there's value to believing in God and Christ and conservative values and things like that, doesn't mean we have to follow every single thing she does. If she says something that we agree with, we can agree with it, despite her past indiscretions or flaws. If she says something we don't agree with, it's easy for us to disagree as well. That's fine. That's a part of life. It's a part of being human too. But there are some fundamentals. See, Nicki Minaj may have not lived the most ideal Christian life, but none of us have. Certainly President Trump himself would say, hey, I haven't lived the best Christian life either. I would certainly say that. I'm not here to Bible thump you because I think I'm perfect and I'm some high and mighty figure that gets to cast judgment down on you. But we can in good confidence, we can confidently talk about the principles and the fundamentals. The fundamentals are not that we expect people to be perfect to participate in the Christian way of life. The fundamental is that you don't believe in Satan, that you don't give your loyalty to Satan, that you don't worship Satan, that you don't pretend and play with the demonic or dress up like the devil. That's what we demand as a starter. Is there will be no conflation between God and the devil. And if we can start there, we can work with you. We can work with you. It's because we accept the proposition of sin. And this is something I want to go even deeper into right now. There's a reason why the feminist movement has been leading the BLM and LGBTQ mania in this country. And there is something intrinsic here when it comes to, personality traits of women. Not all women, not even most women, but a good portion of women, and certainly the ones that come from the feminist perspective. And certainly ones that you find that have a feminist perspective, even when you're not talking about issues of politics and gender war, so to speak. Women, culturally, in this country, as I've witnessed many times in my own personal life, and I'm going to be talking about that in the days to come, because we can't shy away from this fact. Women, a lot of women in this country, in our culture, have an allergic reaction to accountability. They have an allergy. They have a real histamine response, almost, at least in their head, to accountability. And I have watched time and time again where a woman will completely rewrite reality in order to avoid accountability. It's happening in my own personal life in very recent times. And I'm about this close to talking about it full throttle. I'm about this close. Oh, I'm so close that I can taste it. It's taken everything in me to hold back from talking about this situation. But I think once I do, and I'm able to, it'll be clarifying. And hopefully it'll be clarifying for the other person and others that are listening or watching or have experienced this in their own life. But I tell you this, women, and I don't say this to be insulting, and I don't say this to suggest that men don't have our share of problems as well, or that men can be guilty of this, because we can. I say this to tell you in all honesty and in genuineness and out of love. In my experience, women, many, many women in America, in our culture, have been indoctrinated with a mentality that makes them averse to any accountability whatsoever. And so you can see where a culture of politics in this country, led and sort of driven by a feminist worldview, would reject the fundamental proposition of sin, and instead of asking for forgiveness, acknowledging their wrongs and asking for forgiveness, they would rather give up and give over to Satan. And that's what you're seeing with young Billie Eilish. She's struggling with sin so much she can't even come to grips with the proposition of sin itself. She resents the proposition itself. She resents that there's a world, a framework of human existence that there's an existential framework where she would have to continuously be accountable for her actions to a higher authority, where she would have to admit that she is wrong. And it's not by accident that she's become a global pop star and that a bunch of other young women find relatability with her and in that. I know some of you aren't going to like that. Some of you aren't going to like that, but I've seen it in my own life personally, and I've watched it culturally. Modern day women in America have a very tough time admitting that they're wrong. They have an even tougher time apologizing meaningfully. And when I say meaningfully, I mean that they actually mean it. Like, I think that I was wrong. Not, I need to apologize because I was caught doing something that I shouldn't be doing. And now there are going to be consequences, and maybe the consequences will be a little softer if I apologize for it. I don't mean that type of apology. I mean the type of apology where I actually believe in my own heart that I was wrong. There is a crisis of accountability in our culture. You see it in the black community, and it's not by accident, it's not a coincidence that a lion's share of the young black men in this country are raised by single black mothers, and they struggle with accountability. Perfect example. The other day I came across a video where a black mother or a group of black mothers were in the courtroom claiming that this older white man who used to be a veteran, who was a veteran, shot and killed 3 young black men who tried to break into his home with loaded firearms. They tried to break into his home. In fact, I don't even know if they actually had guns or not. I think they did, if I'm not mistaken. But even if you try to break into a person's home with a mask on, whether it's in the daytime or at night, they have a right to shoot and kill you. And the mothers tried to claim that this man was overly violent because of how many times he shot them. A lack of accountability. No, I know it's sad, it's tragic, it's horrifying, it's heartbreaking that you raised a child that for some strange reason thought that it would be wise or acceptable or appropriate or even safe in some sense to kick another person's door in, to kick in the door of another person's home for whatever reason they were going in there. Whether it was to get a little money or some type of valuable item or whatever the case may be, just as a fucking joke, as an initiation to prove how tough they are, whatever the case may be. The fact that some young teenagers would think that that's appropriate is a failure of parenting, for the most part. Now, you have some good parents out there in the world, in this country, in black communities, who do a good job, who try and do a good job, but their children are still susceptible and influenced by peer pressure, by the people they're around. Namely, the schools, the public schools, by the way. So it shouldn't be lost on us that the time you don't spend with your children is time that they're spending with other adults who are impressing their worldview upon them. And there's a crisis in that area as well, obviously. So there are parents who do parent, try to parent the right way, and then the influence of their peers or maybe the school or the environment that they're in overwhelms the things that the parents teach in the home. I understand that. But let's just be honest. Let's just be real honest. Most of it's a failure of parenting. Most of it's a failure of accountability, and it's small shit. It's small shit like, I throw a tantrum, and instead of, getting a swat on my butt, on my behind, I cry and my parents give in because they would rather not deal with the inconvenience of me crying or me throwing a tantrum. Maybe they don't have the time. Maybe they're too busy. Maybe they're tired from work. Maybe they're sick. Maybe they have some type of physical or mental impairment. All of these things could be possible. But these are the things that and for the black community specifically, it's single black mothers who have to work in a lot of cases to make ends meet. And so they're not able to pay close enough attention to their young black males. And let's talk about the black men specifically, because the black men are the disproportionate group of violent offenders. So let's talk about the young black men. A lot of these single black mothers are working so much to make ends meet. They couldn't work it out with the dad. Mom and dad couldn't figure it out, couldn't communicate. Everything's got to be some type of fighting battle, even if it means we got to lie on each other and go for each other's throats like we never knew each other or never having any love for each other at all. And maybe sometimes you have a kid with somebody you just met and there is no real genuine love there. But I know people been together, married 10, 15, 20 years. As soon as something goes wrong, they act like they hate each other. They'd rather see each other die than to see their children live. That's right. There's a lot of people out there who are so selfish and narcissistic. They've been together with a person, the father or mother of their children, for 10, 15, 20 plus years. And when something doesn't go their way, they would rather see each other die than watch their children live and prosper. And as soon as you make that decision, it's no wonder that a lot of these young black men end up in the system, end up doing shit they got no business doing because there's a crisis of accountability. Crisis of accountability. In the black community, I've watched it my whole life. I dare anybody to tell me different. Tell me different. Please call me crazy. Tell me that there isn't a crisis of accountability in our black communities. And I'll tell you, you're full of shit. You're an absolute liar. But see, the black woman in America got her cultural, spiritual, political philosophy from these white women in the suffrage movement, these liberal white women, these leftist, feminist white women. And you follow them. You follow them. You run behind them hand and foot. You want to be like them. For all of these black women that talk about racism and white supremacy, you surely do imitate the philosophy of liberal and leftist white women a lot. And you do. You do. Oh, you think the feminist and suffrage movement was a black woman-led movement? They might pick a few black women who were maybe prominent or influential in the movement out to give you as an example, as an icon, to feel relatable. But the ideology itself, the feminist ideology as a political idea, as a political movement, didn't come from black women. Not even close. You were recruited. You were drafted. Your recruitment and drafting coincided a conscious expansion of the federal government and the welfare state. That's not an argument. We can look at the timeline. We can look at the marriage rate, the decline in marriages in black families, the amount of single mothers, the amount of young black men that grew up without a father that found themselves in the system or in trouble for violent offenses. And we can look at the rise or the erection of the welfare state and the mainstreaming of the feminist movement. And we see a convergence of what we're suffering through right there. When Billie Eilish gets up there at the Grammy stage and has the audacity to basically say, fuck you, Nicki Minaj, black woman, fuck you. Fuck you. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't have any right to go against the conventional wisdom of this elite group of high priests. Satanic high priests, by the way. You don't have any right to go against our beliefs and what we think. No one is illegal on stolen land. Nicki Minaj says different. Nicki Minaj says different. And look at the people they made fun of yesterday. It wasn't just Nicki Minaj. It was also Drake. You know, Trevor Noah, South African Trevor Noah, by the way, also an immigrant. also an immigrant, recently immigrated to this country, mind you, Trevor Noah of The Daily Show, who's somewhat funny. I mean, not unbelievably funny by any means. He's okay. You know, him and Ronnie Chang, they had a good laugh about me over there on The Daily Show, and I love it. I mean, as long as you spell my name right, I can't get enough. These people wouldn't debate me if their life depended on it. If their life depended on it, they'd just take the bullet. If we were brought to a cliff and Trevor Noah and I were standing across from one another and they said, we're going to have a 3-round intellectual philosophical debate right here, right now, Trevor Noah would jump before he'd debate me. Again, that narcissism. He'd rather die than have to face the fact that he's wrong. Than have to face the fact than to watch his political worldview collapse under the weight of its own contradiction. He'd rather jump. But they took a shot at Drake too. Oh, he told Kendrick Lamar, oh, you had a great album and this, that, and the song, and oh, I was going to make a few jokes to roast you, but then I saw what you did to light-skinned dudes, so I'm going to leave you alone. Really? Who would even say something like that? That's not even funny. Ricky Gervais, that was funny. When Ricky Gervais stood up at the Oscars about 5 or 6 years ago, I think, and said, you know, all of you pretend you're woke, but the companies you work for, if ISIS started a streaming service, you would call your agents. You don't have any right to lecture people about anything. You have no idea what the real world is like. So when you win your award, and I'm verbatim is, what he said. When you win your award, come up here, accept your little award, thank your agent, thank your God, and fuck off. That's a real man. Real men see and call out the contradiction, even if it's at their own expense. Real men, especially in times of chaos and crisis, real men don't go with the crowd. They don't go with the flow. And that's why this individual right here has my respect. Because when all of your political elites were standing up at the podium, feeding you a bunch of propaganda and lies, one person in the recent history of American politics had the balls to stand up there and say, you know what? They may crucify me for this. They may call me stupid or dumb. They may deplatform me. They may even try and throw me in prison or assassinate me. But here's the truth. Flaws and all. Remember, flaws and all. The Christian way of life, we believe in repentance. We believe in forgiveness. We accept the fundamental proposition of sin. And the scripture tells us how to remedy that with repentance and forgiveness. That's how we can accept a person like President Trump, because we know that all men are flawed, all men are fallen. The question is, and what we measure is he going in the right direction? That's why if he had been with Epstein in, let's say, the last couple of years, that'd be a much different proposition than him being with Epstein 20 years ago. And I'm not saying it isn't still a moral indictment of him, because it is. The same way it's a moral indictment of Bill Clinton, the same way it's a moral indictment of Bill Gates, the same way it would appear it's a moral indictment of Jay-Z or Pusha T or any of these Hollywood elites that wanted to take a little swim at Epstein Island to get their freak on. And we distinguish the severity of their involvement by, were you with children? Were you with underage people? Or were you with adults? Now, it would seem that a good portion of the people who were involved with Epstein had some involvement with underage people, with people who were underage. Been no accusations against President Trump in that regard. And so I think all in all, the Epstein files fare well for him in the end. The question for all of us is, why are we going to sit here and pretend like Jeffrey Epstein isn't a manifestation or a byproduct of all of our sexual perversion, the sexual perversion of the society? Because some of you guys are into just as much strange and kinky shit as Jeffrey Epstein was. Truth be told. And let's just talk about the reality. Don't think for a second we don't see the connection, the correlation between Jeffrey Epstein's worldview politically and him saying that the Time's Up movement, which is another, another word for the feminist movement, the women's rights movement. It's the new term for the suffrage movement, the Time's Up movement. Never think we don't see the correlation between Jeffrey Epstein's worldview and the Time's Up movement, and how all of these feminists somehow find it remotely appropriate that they're pushing LGBTQ theory in the schools at the grade school level. Don't ever think that we're stupid to that fact, because we aren't. We see it with clear eyes. Hey, we get it. 50 Shades of Grey, it was a lot of women's favorite book. You got this fantasy about getting tied up, maybe a little swaddling on the, a little smack on the butt, and, you maybe got the ball gag or the blindfold, or, it's in a society, where there isn't as much danger as there used to be, as much natural danger as there used to be. It makes sense that both men and women would look to the sexual domain to play out a sort of manufactured danger for excitement. It's the same thing that we do with sports. We play out the adrenaline of high pace, high physicality competition as a way to supplement the need for war. And I don't say that we need war, but you know what I mean. The historical prevalence of war in our DNA. We supplement the historical nature of war. We supplement the historical nature of war. We supplement our history of war in society through sports, which is why it's become one of the most popular and successful domains. Not just for business, but for human achievement. We've achieved great things in the sports domain for that reason. It's penetrating. It's relatable. It's connected to something deep in us biologically that we need, or we wouldn't be that interested in it. The same thing can be said for sex. Sex has become sports. Religion, sex has become sports. Sports has become religion. Sex has become sports. Sex and sports have become religion, and your religion is perverse. And that's why you'll look past all of the important people and institutions Jeffrey Epstein was connected to, and you'll scapegoat your anger onto President Trump yet again. And it's so corny, and it's so obvious. For anybody who has any critical thought whatsoever, it's so obvious that's what you're doing. All you people in Hollywood are weird as shit. All you people in Hollywood are weird. It doesn't shock us that a young woman like Billie Eilish finds herself, flirting with the demonic and dressing up like the devil, like a demon. That doesn't surprise us. We've been seeing this type of weird shit come out of Hollywood for decades now. What happened to the Sinatras or the Dean Martins? What happened to the Ava Gardners? What happened to some of these what happened to Billie Holiday? What happened to Nat King Cole? What happened to some of these elegant, classy people in the entertainment business? Now, am I saying that there wasn't a presence of evil and wickedness and Satanism and predatory sexual behavior even in those days? No, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying, and I guess I want to leave you with this, the important thing about Christianity and the important thing about a country with laws is that you set a standard and it aims people toward that standard, even if they fall short. The point is that there is a standard. And without a standard, what you have is a moral and spiritual free-for-all. A free-for-all always ends in more chaos and violence and tragedy than if you hold a standard. So we have to have laws. We have to have boundaries. Even if we accept that a lot of people will end up breaking them. And that is the framework of this entire immigration argument. The argument is that these people live in these war-torn or desperate places. So inevitably, they're going to flee from those situations and they're going to have to cross somebody's border. So the only humane thing to do then is to get rid of the border altogether. There is nothing remotely appropriate about that, morally, ethically, intellectually, spiritually, politically, culturally, legally. There is nothing remotely appropriate about that way of thinking. That because somebody is going to inevitably do something wrong, we should move the boundary or move the standard of right and wrong. That is moral relativism. And dare I say, it is my opinion, it's my theory of the case, that moral relativism is a pathway to moral decay and demonic possession. Moral relativism is the gateway drug to demonic possession. It's been another episode of the Royce White Show. I'm sorry. It's been another episode of Please Call Me Crazy. I'm doing so many different shows now. I forget. I hope you understand what I'm saying. And I hope people don't take that personal. And I hope you realize just because I wear a flannel and a red trucker hat like a good old American boy, I have a deep affection for the intellectual, and I think we need a revival of the intellectual. I say all the time, and I guess I'll end with this, and I can't stress this enough. The spirit and the intellect are inextricably linked. The spirit and the intellect are inextricably linked. So I understand why people are having trouble with critical thought. I understand why people are having problems with basic first principles. I have a sympathy for that because I understand what the education system in this country has done and was intended to do, to bastardize the intellect as to crush the spirit. That was the goal. If you can bastardize the intellect, if you can bastardize a person's intellect and their intelligence, if you can stunt their intelligence, their intellectual growth, you can crush their spirit. And a lot of us have been a victim of that. A lot of us have been a victim of that social engineering. It's not by accident, but it's also not something that you can escape the accountability that you have in it. You can't escape your culpability in that as well. Because while I say that the intellect and the spirit are inextricably linked, yes, the intellect can be fostered. Intelligence can be fostered. Intelligence can be grown and developed. But it's also something that you have to desire. And it's a choice that you have to make. I could have been anywhere in the world right now. I could be anywhere in the world right now. I could be in Europe. I could be in Southeast Asia. I could be down in the Caribbean. I could be down in South America playing basketball for a living, having my way paid for, putting a little bit of cash in my pocket, competing at 3/4 of my potential capacity and still being elite in that respective league, still being at the top of the heap in that league, and spending the rest of my time just having a blast, as the Democrats would say, do as thou wilt, doing whatever the hell I wanted to do. But I made a conscious decision that despite my flaws, despite my ineptitudes, despite all of my shortcomings, this country, our people, our countrymen and women are worth fighting for, are worth standing for, are worth speaking the truth to. It's worth something. And that's where you have the only chance to transcend the moral decay of the time. If not, I can assure you, as sure I can assure you, I can assure you. As sure as the turning of the earth, as sure as the turning of the earth, you will fall into spiritual turmoil. It's not just enough to say you believe in God. You have to have something that anchors you, a standard. That's what those commandments are there for. It's what the gospels are there for. They're there to anchor you, to set a standard for you to aim at. Nobody's saying that if you set that standard, you're going to rise to the occasion all the time. In fact, the Bible would actually suggest the opposite. You're going to go through many trials and tribulations along the way. You're going to go through many battles with right and wrong, many battles with sin, many battles on your way to eternal damnation or eternity in heaven, many battles along the way. The question is, do you have enough courage and backbone to hold a standard in the first place? And I started this by talking about the fundamental proposition of sin, the difference between Christians and non-Christians, the difference between believers and non-believers is we actually believe that we're capable of doing wrong. If your morals are relative, when push comes to shove, you don't really believe that you're capable of doing wrong, or let's say you're highly susceptible to move the goalpost to change the standard based on whatever it is your own selfish desires are in that moment. Thanks again for being here. We appreciate your viewership and your listenership. Today and in the future, like I said at the beginning of the show, we're going to be doing a 7 to 9 a.m. Central call-in show, daily call-in live stream on Rumble, starting February 15th. I'm sorry. February 15th is our projected launch date of our live stream daily call-in show. Professor Penn and I will be doing that together during the drive time hour. And we look forward to seeing a lot of you join in the conversation, call in, get in the chat. We can have a more interactive show. These are dangerous times. On Wednesday, I want to go over some of this Epstein stuff in more depth. Signal from the noise in the Epstein files. Epstein says that the Jews are getting rich betting on forward future agreements, which we got to talk about maritime law and British Admiralty law and the entire international supply chains when it comes to logistics and trade and shipping and all of that. And we're going to have, not President Trump, that would be amazing. We're going to have Professor Penn on Friday because he's very familiar with international trade and business, being that he's been, an importer for 40 years. So I want to talk to him about British Admiralty law and have him kind of tell us how the whole thing works and, out there in the wild. So it's one thing to talk about trade and economics in a more academic manner, even in a political context, and then somebody who's actually in the business and they can tell you how it works out there in the wild. So we're going to have Professor Penn in on Friday and do a Hebrews episode to talk about trade. I was so taken aback to see that Jeffrey Epstein was involved with the Trilateral Commission, the Rockefeller Foundation, a who's who of international or global organizations, which shouldn't surprise us, but yet it is yet again vindicating for all of those who said, oh, when you say globalist, it's a dog whistle for anti-Semitism. Well, I didn't really mean Jews when I said globalist, because I don't think globalism is exclusive to Jews. But certainly Jeffrey Epstein was a Jewish man, and his involvement in what appears to be an international scandal and an international intelligence operation is something we should be able to discuss without being called racist, anti-Semitic. We're gonna do that as only we can here between myself and Professor Penn on Friday, the Hebrews edition. But until then, Wednesday, we have Panamanian Ricky. I don't know if you guys have seen this video of Panamanian Ricky. He's talking about young girls, apropos to what we discussed today, young girls and the things that we're teaching our young women. There's this great viral clip. He's sitting there in a podcast with 3 other men, and he goes off on a rant, just a powerful rant about what we teach our young girls in the Black community. And I got connected with him on social media, and I asked him would he come on the podcast and share some of his views. Obviously, he's from the East Coast. I can tell by his accent because I lived in Philly. And I also grew up playing basketball with a lot of the East Coast kids from the DMV, Philly, New York City, tri-state area. So I recognize the accent, but we'll let him tell more about his story on Wednesday. But this is a transformative time in American politics. It really is. And I hope you guys stick with me and the show, and we can have these type of deep conversations like we did today. And this is a deep dive. We're getting back to our schedule. I said Mondays, deep dive, Wednesday, news, interviews, Friday, Hebrews, interviews. We're going to try and keep that schedule with the podcast, even after we start the daily show. So when we go to the daily 7 to 9 drive time live stream call-in show, I'm still going to be doing the podcast, hopefully Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But we may do it daily. I mean, the conversation over the next 6 to 8 months in the run-up to 2026, the 2026 midterms is going to be so important. Is not to even I can't even quantify it. I can't even stress how important the conversation, the dialogue is going to be, because clearly the dialogue is broken. I mean, again, if you say no one is illegal on stolen land, you are suggesting that this country should be a country without laws. We just can't have that type of government, but we shouldn't even have that type of thinking. That's it for me. Have a great evening. We'll see you next time.
Everything's up on the bar. We're all in. We get to decide. Do you want to live on your knees, or do you want to die on your feet fighting? That's the decision you get to make now.